Okay, thank you everyone to join this training today. Today we will have a KKI training, and this is the outline today. You can see at the beginning we will give you a short introduction about KKI, in case someone doesn't know what is a KKI. And then I will give you would describe turn your Excel form into web applications. Then I will describe how to implement these with KKI. We will have a Q&A section. Okay. First, we will give you a brief introduction about KKI. KKI is a UI component based on ZK UI framework and event-driven programming models. And so you can create, implement a Java. And I will give you a short KKI spreadsheet components. So its common use case is just like this. You can embed it into one of your page. And maybe this is KKI and there are sidebar or other components. So you can just immediately bring Excel features into your web application. And it also has a familiar Excel user interface. And you also implement most commonly used Excel features. So you can reduce to use costs. KKI, similar format file, taking Excel file into a web page. Let's look into open video file. It has a and it can you can reference to auto field or say drag field, filters, format cells. You can also insert, delete, freeze, high and high rows and columns. It also supports sheet protection that can make your old sheets read-only, and also has a toolbar that contains some quick functions like cell editing or formatting. And some formulas, you can even implement your custom formula functions in Java and use it in your formula. And you can self-host these components in your application server because it's just a jar file, several jar file you can include in your web application. So you can host in your server and you can manage it by yourself. And it's easy to integrate with backend service. You can use KKI within ZK framework with JSF or JSP. And it's very easy to integrate any backend system because it's controlled by Java class. So you can connect to a database or any other existing enterprise service implemented by Java. It also can reference a Spring Bean and Java Bean in a formula. So developers can implement your own authentication or authorization mechanism with our providing API. So you can see here it's easy to integrate with other components, ZK component like ZK charts or ZK map. You can check this in our online demo. It's also customizable. You can customize the appearance by CSS. You can implement the custom functions in Java, and you can manipulate cells, rows, columns, sheet styles, and formats with Java APIs. Don't care about the communication to the client side. And you also can interact with other ZK components. And we also support a special mode we call collaboration edit mode. So it can be configured to support real-time collaboration. So it allows multiple users to edit the same file at the same time. So multiple users can see each other's editing at the real time. So when I editing A1, then everyone can see the result of A1 when I press the enter key. So okay, so this is the summary of the features. You can check here features to know the complete detailed list of the KK features. Okay, let's go back to my slide. So this is just a brief introduction to KK. If you want to know more, you can check these demos here. KK website, official website. You can check it. So there are several demos that you can check and play by yourself. Takes for a while today. Okay, let's continue to next slide. And this is today's use case. It will turn your web forms, your Excel form into a web application. So the situation is like there are lots of vendors. Every vendors will visit a web page to fill their vendors details like name, address, or telephone, something like this. And each form will be converted into a row in a table. So you can see here, 3 vendors will become 3 rows in a table. So after they enter something, some data, they will be converted into a table. And when you click a row in a table, you can edit the details. So let's show you the usage. So this is the form, the original form here. So you can see I can type the form, the name, for example, Square Enix is a game company, Japan, Japan. Okay, telephone number, website, something like this. So you can see I can press the enter to move among these editable cells because not all cells are editable. You can see I cannot click the headers or the label here because it's read-only under protection now, and I can create drop down this here. So after I fill all these fields, I can click the send data and it will show me the table of the vendor. So I can enter another one, for example, uh, Sony uh, and USA, USA, something like this, and fill that and send data. So there are 2 companies. I can click this one to change something. For example, change the details and submit again. Okay, so here you will have more details. So this is just the basic usage of this application. To make things simple, we choose to implement this simple application to demonstrate how you can use KK. Surely you will, in your use case, you will be more complicated, but it's you can base on this concept prototype to build your own. Okay, so this is the the use case. And so later I will tell you about how you can implement this application to show you some basic features or strengths of KK. So first is to build a phone-like UI. It's a user-involved design because if you want to build this kind of phone, usually the software engineer doesn't know the domain. You don't know what the business domain knowledge about the vendor, what kind of field you want to create. So there's a staff of your college in your business departments will tell you, it will communicate with you about how to create these forms. In another UI framework, you might try to use another UI component to create this kind of form. You might create lots of text box or drop down or anything. And after your college tell you your create form, and then you show them, and they might say, oh, there's something I don't want, or something wrong because you don't understand their terms, their terminology, so you might make some mistakes. But with KKI, you can just let those your colleges design this form by themselves because they usually know how to use Excel. So they just use Excel uh, to design these forms with labels, colors, with font size. They can design everything they want. They know because they know what they want. So after they design this form, you just import into KKI and that's it. So you can see here. So if they want to change these colors, background color to another different colors, they don't even tell the software developers. They just change it and give you the new file. You just import it. So the user can involve the design of these web applications. And so it can eliminate communication between these two departments, to between the software engineer and the business persons. So it can immediately turn your existing cells, existing open XML file into a web page because there are many business already operated are operated by the Excel file. They already have some small workflow running by Excel. Maybe you create new form and you fill something and they send this form to the second person. The second person will check, will send to the third person. So many companies already rely Excel file to run their business or workflow, but this is not cannot be easy integrate with web application. So they can just immediately import this file into KKI and their workflow will become online. So they will turn this file you can see into a web page. So this is how we say the user can involve the design and can easily help you to build your form like UI. So you can even create a drop-down with data validation. You see this validation, you see the drop-down here actually is rely on a feature we call data validation. So if you create a validation here, you check the setting here, it's actually you can set a type, validation type with list and its source legal. And legal is the named range. So you can see actually it comes from another sheet here. This range we can give it a name. This is legal. So in the legal, these words represent A1 to A5. So when you specify data validation with list type and give this type with a name, a source with a name range, then it will render these values, this value in this range as a drop-down list here. So KKI also support this. So if you configure such data validation in your Excel file, and KKI can load the setting and also render a data validation, a drop-down list in your browser. So you can see exactly the same thing. So you can select from this list without input by yourself manually and can avoid user typing some error value. So if you try to type anything invalid or not in the list, you will show you a warning. So has restricted values, so you can cancel then choose another one. So this is how we call data validation. And the last one is a button you can see here. It looks like a button, but actually currently KKI doesn't support those form control here, the button control here. So how do we make a button? Actually, it's just a cell, a merged cell with a special background and borders. So it looks like a button. And so later we will tell you how to uh, listen to make it run like a button. But now we focus on how to build a UI. So you can see you can create a user interface with Excel, and you can create some user input with this. Okay, so this is the first things you need to do to build a UI: a button, a drop-down list, and import into KGI, and that's done. Because KGI is based on the ZK UI framework, so we need to give you a short understanding about MVC, because this is based on this MVC architecture. M means model, V means view, and C means controller. So the ZK UI framework just plays two roles in the whole application, web application. Usually you will implement your web application in multi-tiers architecture. The upper layer is the view, usually is the UI components, and later the under it is the controller. It will receive events from views, it will control the view. So, and it will also calling service layer to perform some service, and service will calling the persistent layer to access the database. So the ZK framework plays view or controller. So the KCI is just also at this layer. So it's very, you can see it's very clear, and so you can create a controller through calling any your Java service, your service class implemented by Java. So it doesn't limit you which uh, middle framework you use, maybe Spring or anything else. It doesn't limit you which persistent layer framework you use, maybe it's Hibernate, Ibertis, JPA, or doesn't limit you any database you use. So it can be Oracle, MySQL, anything else. So ZK and KCI just at this level, so you can use anything you want in another tier. Okay, so the basic architecture is MVC. So inside the component, the view and controller, we also KK also support MVC patterns. So in specifically the Zool, the UI framework we usually suggest using Zool to describe the UI page. Uh, so what is Azure? Azure is XML format UI language. Uh, so I will show you. This is our Azure in this application. So you can see, because it's very simple, so there's just one tag, but one tag represents one component. So we use KKI spreadsheet, so we use spreadsheet tag to represent one component. And surely the ZK also provide other component like buttons or even menus, menu bar, uh, menu, something like this. So you can use this to build your UI uh, with uh, with ZK provided built-in components. And each tag represents one component, and each attribute represents some features of this component. So you can specify you can configure these components by specifying attributes like its height, its width, or even the file you will import to specify source here, to specify max visible column, max visible rows, either with height, column header, to show formula bar or not. And so this is the Zool, how Zool look like. So ZK UI languages. So it's a XML format language. Okay, so this is a Zool represent a place a role view, and then you need to create a controller. A controller is a Java class. It will receive uh, events from the client side. So you can see here is the controller. The controller is the Java class that extend our building ZK building composer. Here we say composer because it is responsible for compose the view, but it plays the role controller. So if you want to create a ZK control to control the UI, the Zool component in Zool, you need to extend this composer. Okay, so you can see this is our compose. But how to associate a composer to Azure. You can see here in apply attribute layer, you need to specify a full qualified class name to connect the composer to Azure. So after you specify this, then every time when you click a button or trigger an event, you will fire event to this controller to seek if there's any event listener. If there's event listener for the current event, then you will invoke, ZK will invoke for you so you should implement business logic inside it. And there's a while and listen, because in MVC patterns, we control the components by components API. So you can see we need to find a way to get components reference. But the life cycle of the controller is controlled by ZK. So you don't need to write a new statement uh, for composer. You don't need to new view vendor application client composer. You don't need to write this. You just apply here, and when user visit this page, the ZK framework will create an object of this composer and associate between the view and this composer. So you don't need to initiate by yourself, uh, and but you still need a way to get the reference of this spreadsheet object. So you don't have to new a composer by yourself. Uh, you don't have to write a new statement. Just use the wire notation here, and during the life cycle of the Zool creation, then ZK framework will inject the spreadsheet object on the Zool file into this variable. So you just need to apply the notation with the correct selector syntax. So this short sign means its ID is spreadsheet client. So you can see here, the spreadsheet client. That's the ID of this spreadsheet. So these syntax will tell ZK framework to wire a spreadsheet component that created by ZK framework and inject into this variable. So you can see here, I can directly call it without, you don't see any new statement here. So that's because ZK will do this for me. So if I want to access these components, I need to do it inside the doF compose. These lifecycle methods means everything already done. Invoke after ZK loaders create uh, component, initializing compose children's, if any. So if you want to do some initializing things, you need to do it in doF compose. So you can access here. And what's add listen? Add listen is a notation to register an event listener for a method. So the syntax is like this. You need to specify the event name and the event target. So this annotation means when cell click event happens on spreadsheet component, then it will invoke this method. So this is the way to register event listener, which is the method of this class with this annotation. So on cell click and happen on spreadsheet client, so you will invoke this. And inside the event listener, you can implement your application logic. So this is event-driven programming model. Application is driven by events, and component you call component API to control the component. Okay, so this is the basic architecture of this MVC patterns. The Zool, you declare a component and you apply a controller to a Zool, and the controller you specify a while notation to let ZK inject those component reference to you, so you can call those components API to manipulate these components. And another is you listen, you apply the notation to listen some events happen in the browser, so you can listen the event and running some application logic to implement your application features. So this is controller, this is view, and there are models in your backend. Maybe it's a search or some data process logic in the service layer. So this is MVC patterns in a quick view. Okay, then the next one is to retrieve the user input. We need to retrieve what user input in the form uh, like this. Uh, so after I input this, and when I click send data, then I can retrieve what user input in each cells, and I can extract it to save in the database and query in the future. So how do we implement this? Is we use the name range because there are many cells. You can see the many cell here, and every cell, although every cell has its cell address. Maybe, for example, this is D6, this is the D8, D10, D12. So you can get this value by using this cell address, but we don't recommend because these form might change in the future. So if you use D6 here to get the value of D6, and in the future, if someone insert one row, then D6 will become D7. Then your Java code you need to modify your Java code because now it's D7. But it doesn't just change one cell. Every cell in this form also change. So you need to change lots of code because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and maybe there are 20 cells in this. So you need to at least change 20 lines of code just because the cell address change. So in alternative, we would suggest you use a name range. What is the name range? Name range is you can give a sales or multiple sales a name. So it's a company name. This is company address. It's a country. So even you move these sales positions, this cell still called company name. So I can even cut, for example, if I cut these cells into another place, you can see it's still called company name. So if I get these cells by company name with these names, it doesn't matter where it's at D6 or it's in O6, the Excel will give me the correct name. So I don't need, it's better not to use the absolute cell address to locate a cell. Okay, so your code, your Java code can resist uh, some layout change or position change, cell position change. So this is why we suggest you to use the name range to locate cells. And so first we will look at how to do this. And when when do we get the user input? That's when we click the cell. So you can see first we need to implement a cell listener. Cell click listener is use listen on cell click here and can create choose a meaningful method name and it will pass the cell mouse event. And through this event you can check its sheet name. You must make sure that because you can click D6 in first sheet and second sheet or third sheet. Every sheet has a D6. So you need to make sure that, okay, it's in the expected sheet. It's a source sheet, means it's a form. Okay, so it's a sheet in this sheet and in a specific row and a specific column because the button is at this position. So when someone click these positions means it click send data buttons, then we start to perform the data processing to grab the data in cells and save into our uh, persistent repository. So let's see here. This method you can see, we can get the range by company name. The range API is the main API that you need to perform any edit operation. So you can see if there's a range API, it contains lots of methods to get cell values, style, or even set. Maybe we okay. There's a set cell edit text, lots of set add. Almost every action you want to do is inside the range API. So there are lots of set cell, set methods, set hidden, set row height, set sheet name. So many actions. So every action you want to perform is in the range object. So first you need to create a range object. The range object can represent one cell, multiple cells, or column, or sheet, or row. So there are many factory methods here. So you can range by name, range by area reference, like A1, B2, or range by a block of cells by the row and column index, or just range by one cell. So you just give one row index, a column index is zero base index. You can create a range of whole sheet, even a whole book. So there are many ways to allow you to create a range object. So after you create range object that represent, for example, in this case, we use the name range to locate a cell and call its get cell value to get the name, the company name in that cell. So if company name is not known because company name is required, so I will try to get a column. There is a list of name range because there are many name range in this cell and this sheet. You can see company name, email, phone, list, legal structure, contact one name. So there are many name range here. So we can here we actually have a list of name range in a constant collection here. Uh, so we can iterate these collections, this map, to grab each file, each name range in the sheet. So this is the way I can get the name range. And for every name range, okay, I just also create a range object by names, and I get cell value. So I can, by iterating these names, I can grab each cell value into variables, and I will store it into a map. Okay, stored into a current vendor map. Then after I collect every sales, every input fields in sales, I will use my persistent utility, or maybe in your case it's the persistent some DAO vendor data access object to add it and to save it into your database. So after process every sales, I redirect to another Azure. Uh, and so you can see here, to turn a cell into a button, yeah, I just mentioned you just turn a cell to give you a background and a border to make it look like a button, but actually it's a cell. So you need to listen to on cell click event and implement your application logic. So this is how we implement to grab each cell, each input fields of this form. Okay, so in the next one, next slide is to limit user editing area. You can see there, this file actually original is a sheet. So by default, you can edit any cells in a sheet, but we don't want this because in a normal web page, I don't want user to accidentally change the header, change the title, change the label. That's not, uh, that's so very weird. So I want user to focus on those input field, just several here, company name, address, countries. Um, but if you just load import this file that user can edit every cells. So we need to use a one function called protect sheets. Then you will protect the whole sheets to be read only. So you can see now I cannot select these headers and labels. I can just select several cells. And why I can select these cells and edit these cells? That's because these cells are unlocked. So you can limit the area. For example, I want this cell to be editable under sheet protection. So I need to check the format cell here, the protection. You can uncheck the lock to make it unlock. So you can see by default, every cell is locked. So you can see here, it's locked. So when a cell is locked and you enable the sheet protection, then it's read-only. So when a cell is unlocked and you enable sheet protection, then it's editable. So we can rely on these features to just set unlock for every input field here, uh, every input field to make it unlock and then protect the sheet. And we can even do this in Java. So here we say how we limit user editing area. Uh, so this effect is after you enable sheet protection, the another benefits you can see, user can just jump among these editable cells. When he press the enter or press the tab or press the shift tab, so easy to jump among those editable cells. So user cannot jump to any cell arbitrarily. They can focus on those input fields. Okay, so it's another benefits. And so how do we do it? You can see here after compose. This method is a lifecycle method. It will be invoked. Just I mentioned, it will be invoked after ZK create all the components. So everything is ready. Every component is created, so we can do some initializing things. So here we do some processing like protect all sheets. I will get a sheet from get the source sheet I want in these methods, and I will protect the all sheets. Actually, we just have one sheet. So in these sheets, I want to protect this sheet. So first I need to create a range object here. Okay, so this is one API, just pass one sheet here. Okay, and call the protect sheet. Then you will protect. But I need to specify which permission here. So I can here in protection, it will pass a sheet protection object here. And because there are many permission you can specify, so we support a build pattern, a builder pattern like API. So we can say here, builder create with select unlock cell a lot. That means you can select unlock cell, and actually you can see there are 14 different permission you can specify. So you can see with delete column a lot, true or false. But default everything, every option is false. So you can just specify those uh, permission that you want to enable. Okay, so you don't have to specify 14 uh, call 14 methods. Just call, for example, in this case, I just call two methods for a lot select unlock cell and for a lot autofill. Okay, that's why we call view only. So because I just want user to select unlock cell for edit for input. So I create these sheet protection configurations settings. Finally, you can call in in a fluent API way, and finally call build to create this sheet protection object and pass this object into protect sheet methods. Okay, so this will enable protections for every sheets, and then it will create this result. So Okay, so you cannot edit other cells. Okay, let's proceed to the next topic. So you can press the tab and key to jump among cells. The next cell is about building table support with the filters. Actually, in Excel, you might notice there is a features called tables. You can turn a range of cells into a feature. It contains lots of different style here. So you can choose the style that you like. Then it will give you a table style like this is header, this is table rows. So it will give you uh, consistent style of table rows. For example, if you try to insert a row here, insert row here, it will also keep you the table style with one row blue, one row white, something like this. So it will keep this style for you automatically, and you don't need to worry about, oh, do I need to set the background or the font size? You don't need to worry about this. The Excel will keep for you. And automatically, when you apply a table, you will automatically generate a table name. The table name will become a named range. So if you see here, there's a display table and its name range is A2 to AF6. Okay, after you insert, you will become more and more larger and larger. By default, you can see this range doesn't include the header. Okay, but that means you can locate this table by this name range. So this is the table support in the table feature in Excel. And KK also support this. So you can see after we submit, and this is just the table. And you can enable the filter, and you can use the filter without any program. You don't need to implement the filter by yourself. Just enable it, and you just can use it without one line of code. So it's very convenient. Just enable the filters like this. Okay. So this is the table support in KK. We can read and load the setting you specify in Excel. So you can maintain the style for you after you insert, and you can use the built-in filters. The next one is to populate data with name range. Okay. The same rules apply here because each table has a name that contains rows without headers. So uh, we can rely on this name range to populate data instead of using an absolute cell address. So in this case, you can see if you found in my original file, I don't specify a fixed column name. That means maybe I want to change the column orders dynamically with my Java code. So there's no column name here. So I populate these column names in Java code. So let's see how to do it. Oh, because they have different logic, so I create a different Zool file in with a different composer. So this is vendor app manager composer. Okay, so you can see here, vendor to web compose, and this is some initial things. It populate the data from the database to workbook. Okay, so if someone okay, let's see how it populates. So first it will populate header. Okay, the header here. So I query from database to get all vendor data. Then later I populate headers. Then the headers I will you can see I will get the sheet here, the spreadsheet get book, get sheet. This is a sheet name. Uh, the sheet name is sheet one. Okay, so the header cell here, how do I get the header cells? So you can see I use the name range, range by name. And this name range is display table. The display table, remember it only contains the table rows range, doesn't include the row, the header row. So I first get the range of the table rows. Then because I want the header row, so I run, I call to shift range, means it will shift the range by row offset or column offset. Because I want one row above, so I use -1 to shift up to uh, get the header rows. Then I want to fill the header one by one, so I don't want the whole row, I just want first cells. So I can call two cell range with rows offset and columns offset. The 0, 0 means the left most and top most cells. So in these sheets that finally I will get, first I will get this, I will get these rows by name range, and I shift to get these rows, and I call two cells to get these cells. So I will start to fill my column one by one, but the cell, one by one. So I got the first cell, header cells, and I get iterate every uh, column names. So this name range also contain the column name. You can see the column names here. This value, the key name is name range name. Okay. So I populate range, or I iterate these column names, and so I set the cell value. You can see, so every time I want to access a cell, I need to get a range object to set cell value. And after set value, I need to shift to another cells, just the cell on the right hand side. So I call to shift range, shift range and shift one column. So, and iterate the loop every time you will shift to one column. So you will look like this. You will fill this one and shift to next one, fill this one, shift next one, and next one by one like this. So this is how this loop do. So it's just like this. Okay. So this is how you can populate data with named range. And finally, I also mention about the click. Okay, click the company name and bring the company's detail. So if I click this company name, it will give me the detail of this vendor. So you can see the vendor ID here. This is also implemented by the same techniques by Bridges, the event listener of sale click. So you can see I specify range event listener on sale click. You can give any name you want because it ranges this method by basically by the selector syntax on sale click with spreadsheet manager sheet. So you can get the sheet names to determine, oh, does it click on these sheets and does it click on specific rows range, and does it click the company name column. I restrict this. If we click the company name columns, then it will display the vendor detail for it. So you can see in these tables, you can see the name has some underline to make it look like it can click. It's clickable. So that's why when I publish the data, I will apply the bold and the underline. Okay, so this is you click, you determine the range the user click, then you can get the vendor ID from the specific cell, then display the vendor by redirect this with the parameter to original vendor client rule, and the client rule will get this vendor ID to retrieve the vendor data from the database and populate his data into cells by also by name range. Okay, so this is the way. And okay, so here the code is to load a vendor object to publish those vendors. So you can see we also grab it by each names. We get the table range by table names. So I get the vendor table range. So I can insert row by one because there are multiple vendors. So every vendor I just insert one rows, and then uh, I populate its vendors columns, and if it's company name, I will make it bold, make it underline. So for this loop, it's just populate every field of a vendors, every data of a vendor, and this is for each vendors. So this is how you can populate data with range API. Okay, so this is uh, we we implement this whole application, small application, to give you an idea of how to implement this, and based on this, you can implement your more complicated uh, application. And today's the use case I mentioned is at the GitHub. You can get the full source. Is a runnable projects. You can get it here, GitHub KK developer reference. If you want to see more use case, you can see here. This is our online demos. So you can see there are different kind of usage here, use case here. There are many use case, and when you click each case, there is this is a real demo you can try. You can try to use it to feel uh, how you like, and there's a description to describe what is this use case, and there are even codes you can check to see how to implement it. So you can search for different use case. You can check maybe there's something similar to your case. And this is the source code. You can check, you can download and run it by Maven. Even you don't install Maven, we have a wrapper so you can run without installing in advance. So you can check our use case by find vendor layer, vendor client, vendor managers, and source. Okay, so after you check this rule, you can find this composer and check its source code. So you can download this um, project and run at your local to study more details. I think this is helpful for you. You can check more details here, and there are other, even our documentation, so you can check the detail. We have a detailed introduction about every features here and every API, every events you can use, and this every code snippet you can found in this repository. So don't worry if you don't understand this documentation. You can just check out these projects and read and run and just know how does it look like in runtime. So it's very helpful. You can check and try. Okay, this is basic my presentation today. Thank you for everyone.